I don't even know where to begin with this one. So, almost all of my predictions were wrong, but I do have to say that overall, I feel like we did get some epic highs and lows in this episode. We start off on what was for me as a book reader an ultimate high note, and also probably one of my only predictions that ended up coming true from my last video where I said we were probably going to get a flashback of Moraine and Swan in their novice, apprentice days at the tower. And sure enough, I was beyond thrilled to see that we do indeed open with a 20-year flashback at the White Tower.
I love it, I love it,
Moraine and Swan hear the foretelling, called it. And not only that, I lost my shit when I paused and learned that not only are we getting Gitara Sedai and her foretelling about the Dragon Reborn, but Gitara is played by none other than Hayley fucking Mill, one of my favorite, greatest of all time actresses. Has a cameo here as Gitara. That just added a little extra icing on the cake for me because I love Hayley Mills and everything that she has ever done. So I was just thrilled to see her and see her playing this prominent role of Gitara, and she just really nailed the performance of the prophecy or the foretelling about Rand. And then sadly it's and she's gone. R.I.P. to a goat. And I also thought it was a nice little callback to the scene Moraine in season 1, I think episode 1, when she just alludes to there being an Aes Sedai in the tower with eyes so white that she could not see, and that was, now we see just everything kind of coming to fruition and us getting a lot of payoff in this episode. I also just wanted to, as a side note here, say that I love Swan's tattoos. I'm not sure what their inspiration for them was. I did watch this whole x-ray video that I found on YouTube from the costume designers talking about all of the cultural inspirations that they drew on for the different lands and cultures in Wheel of Time, so that was really cool. I think that they look really similar to Berber tattoo designs that I've seen, but that could just be me. I do have to say that even though we did get some really great scenes and events happening in this episode, overall I feel like some of the flaws and the cracks in the storytelling were showing in this episode, just with how they were having to bring all the characters together with where they had them, and just dealing with some of the overall ramifications and loose ends that were created with how they just had different characters positioned this season. Like when Lanfear just flips Matt to Falma through Teleran Riyadh, allegedly. It's still up for debate in my mind whether or not Matt is actually in Falma in real life or if he's still dreaming. But all I can say is that I really think the writers need to stop using "and then somebody knocks them out" as a scene transition, because they already did it with Elaine and Nynaeve last episode, and I think we see at least 2 more examples of it in this episode, so please find another plot device. It's getting old really fast. Then we go back to Moraine and Swan. Throughout this entire episode, I'm just thinking, this has to be a fake out. Right? Moraine and Swan are still besties, right? But she does mention here that they've been exchanging 6 months of letters back and forth without Moraine making any mention of the fact that she thought she was stilled. So perhaps Swan is legitimately hurt by that. She mentions that not only did Moraine try to force or threaten to force Lan's bond, which is just something that is taboo among Aes Sedai because it's akin to coercion. How do I want to put this in a YouTube friendly way? Bonding someone to you as a warder by force, you did not get that person's consent before you decided to go do that. But she also says, more importantly, that now Alana knows about the Dragon Reborn, meaning that sooner rather than later, their secret and the secret about the dragon being reborn in the world is going to be out. So I'm wondering if here that the implications for Swan is that now that it's public knowledge and that someone else knows and knows that Swan knows, she is now forced to play the role of the Amerlin seat, has to act according to Tower law, at least in public. Because she says here in private with Moraine that I've let you carry this burden alone for 20 years. So I'm wondering if that means that she's saying it's her turn to pick up and carry the burden of dealing with Rand now, and that she's just gonna take the heat off of Moraine? Or does this mean that she really does think that she needs to take Rand off Moraine's hands and basically tame him and keep him prisoner in the tower? So I'm still conflicted on whether or not Swan actually has the belief herself behind these convictions and these things that she's spouting, especially having these conversations where they're private, but they have to know that people like Liane, her keeper, and who knows who else are privy to these conversations that they're having. Then we get insert the Great Hunt Feldara scene here with the fan favorite interactions between Rand and Land that we were missing and that everyone has been calling for all season. So we get a little brief Easter egg name drop reference to some more sword forms here, which was great. When he mentions Cat crosses the courtyard, I was like, eh. And so it does become apparent here that Rand did learn something from his Aiel War vet patient that he was taking care of. Just sadly, we didn't get to see any of that on screen. I wish that we would have. But like I said, this episode is very quickly trying to just tie up all its loose threads before the finale, for better or worse. This does mean, and I think is implying, that he could have had anywhere up to 6 months of some type of sword training. And I do think that Rand is right to be nervous here, because we as book readers know, even if he doesn't have it made exactly clear to him, that Swan has brought enough Aes Sedai in her entourage to gentle him if she wished, which is 13. And I did like to see that Rand got an upgrade here to a new nobleman's coat. With the Rand versus Swan scene, she's basically just acting like she's mad that he's still a noob. And so I'm wondering if, again, in these scenes that she's testing him or trying to push him, because I feel like she's almost warning him in this conversation here with Moraine and everyone about what the tower should do with the Dragon Reborn, and basically talking about him and what they should do to him like he's not right there in the room listening to everything they're saying. So again, I'm wondering if this is just all a big act and her saying yes, this is what I should do with you according to Tower law, or if this is all just to give Swan some kind of plausible deniability for his eventual escape. Or is this really all meant to drive a wedge between Swan and Moraine and their relationship? I'm still not sure. I really hope it's the first one and not the second one. Because I want to think, especially knowing the convo that we do get in the Great Hunt between Swan and Moraine, where she did originally agree that they needed to let Rand off his leash a bit and make him at least feel like he's making his own choices, even if they are trying to steer him or goad him one way or the other. So I want to think that the real Swan behind the Amerlin would know that they can't keep Rand tamed like he's basically a male Damani, but maybe she has to maintain this front now as the Amerlin since it's public knowledge. But again, seriously, writers, stop using bashing people's heads against walls as scene transitions and a plot device, because Matt here, I thought, maybe would see Rand get taken and try to go help him, but instead he's just knocked the fuck out by and then wakes up in Falna. But again, is he really there, or is he being inceptioned by Shamael and Lanfear? Side note, love Lanfear's gaslight gatekeep girl boss pantsuit that she's rocking in this scene, but I feel like anytime anyone tells you, hey, I can't lie, or I won't lie, or says something like that, or is verbally reassuring you that they're telling you the truth, especially when it's coming from a Forsaken, it just makes it even more likely that everything that follows is a lie. Because Matt says, is this a dream? And she says no. So did she just off-camera gateway him there, or use her abilities in Teleran Riyadh to physically teleport him to Falma in real life? Because that's really dangerous and taboo, which I'll get into when I make my whole video on Teleran Riyadh. In the scene with Elaine and Nynaeve here, I like Elaine's cute peasant look, and I do remember in that X-ray video that I watched that Falma outfits are mainly Romanian and Croatian inspired. Even though this is a very serious situation that they are in, and even I am left wondering, just with the changes they're making from book to screen, how they are going to get out of this and rescue Egwene, etc., etc. I loved, just seeing more of them arguing about how they're going to handle this, and not only that, but seeing that Elaine, the daughter heir, step up and take charge here. I think it's just one of many ways that Nynaeve will have to learn to work with others and just even learn to defer to others when she's used to being the wisdom and being the one in charge. And that just goes a long way toward her character development. But I was just laughing my ass off at the face that she makes being given orders from Elaine. All I can say about the further Damani training scenes was it just broke my heart. I was like, no, they put the bit in my girl Egwene's mouth. And just not only that, but then seeing the sitter for the Blue Aja also so broken and collared with that bit in her mouth was so cringe. I hate it. But then abrupt cut back to Kyrian, where we get another brilliant little cameo appearance from Sister Cho or Yastika here, repping the brown Aja with Varen in the entourage, and we see these seeds here in this scene of just how all of the Ajas are already beginning to distrust one another, especially with the suspicion now that anyone could be Black Aja, and I do mean anyone, because we see the Browns side-eyeing Joya of the Gray Aja, and I'll have to go look because that name sounds familiar, and even I'm over here like, is she a Black? Because she might be a Black sister. Well, meanwhile, across the courtyard, Alana and her warders are side-eyeing Baron. So, pause, insert screenshot, literally side-eyeing everyone. But I love Elaine's costume here. Again, the costumes here are chef's kiss all around. 3 snaps in Z formation, serving green Aja, eleganza, extravaganza. Then we cut to Leandrin visiting House Damodred. Surprise, surprise. And I'm like, is she there to just try to suss out more information about Moiraine? Or is this another Dark Friend social? But again, all my predictions were wrong. I'm kind of disappointed that it wasn't Moiraine's sister Anvair who was the secret Damodred Dark Friend, because, like, I think Barthana still sucks and is lame, and I get that maybe it was a red herring to think, oh, he's way too nice, that he could never be a Dark Friend. Props to Moiraine's sister for hating her guts, but still staying loyal to her and protecting her at the end of the day. But I have to wonder with what Swan says to Rand here about wishing that he had been born a girl. If the Dragon Reborn had been born a female, would the Tower really have let her have free reign, or would they still have controlled her just like Rand? Like, say, by trying to install her as a puppet Amerlin. Hint, hint. Even as a book reader, it somehow never occurred to me until watching the show how the ADOM work by essentially forcing the link between two channelers, because we've already seen in the show how channelers are able to link together. So the ADOM basically works by forcing that link between two people who can channel, but with only one of them able to control it, just as in a circle, only one person is able to control and direct what they're doing. They are taking that relationship between channelers and that link between them and twisting and corrupting it. I do like the more little light-hearted comedic beats and breathers that the show does give us, even if they are very brief, such as like the scene with Loyal meeting up with Elaine and Nynaeve and her rushing him through his pre-beard Ogier formalities, like yes, her name sings in your ears, we know. Let's move this along. So that was just delightful. And then we get a scene between Ishamael and Matt where we're definitely getting a lot more early insight into Ishi / like the Moradin character motivations, which are essentially just nihilism. And I love Matt's line here of like, is this a sex thing or a murder thing? Because either way I'm out. The Matt is matting here, but I was just thinking like LOL, wrong forsaken Matt. And then we see here that Ishamael wants Matt to take a mushroom tea trip, which I'm like, okay, don't get me wrong, everyone needs a little ego death, but I'm just like, don't do it, Matt.
How can he possibly resist the diabolical urge to push the button that could erase his very existence? Will his tortured mind give in to its uncontrollable desires? Can he withstand the temptation to push the button that even now beckons him ever closer? Will he succumb to the maddening urge to eradicate history at the mere push of a single button? The beautiful, shiny button! The jolly, candy-like button! Will he hold out, folks? Can he hold out?
And the answer is no, he cannot. As a book reader wondering if this was the show's version of the red doorway terangrial scenes where Matt gets some of his past life memories back, or is this just their version of the flicker scene, which is another scene that I, especially as a book reader, and I know other book readers, have sorely been wanting. I think remains to be seen whether we're getting Aelfin Evilfin, and the showrunners are not really telling us one way or the other. With the scene between Perrin and the Aiel, I kind of wish that they'd found some other way, or just a better way, to convey Avienda's G-Ato and the concept of G-Ato with the maidens in general. This whole scene and the pacing of it just felt messed up. It just took away from the momentum that we'd been building with all of the other scenes in my mind. The cutaways were way too hodgepodge. It was not doing it for me, just overall. I think it's nice that we got every character in this episode, but it also, again, made the pacing feel really rushed, like it has in other episodes where we get appearances by every character. Because again, we just cut straight back to where we were before, which was the Matt scene of Matt just tripping balls, and I do have to say that it was freaky awesome. I love that they are playing up in the show these moments of just pure horror that we do see in the books. I feel like it's not as often or not as overt as it is a lot of times in the books, but if you are able to read into things that Robert Jordan says and does in the books, like the horror is there. The little glimpse that we do get of Matt hanging is a nice little Easter egg, whichever way they're playing it. Flicker or doorway terangrial or not. In these exchanges between Moraine and Rand and Swan and all the Aes Sedai, I'm just like, Swan has to know that Leanne and others are listening, right? That's why she's being this way, right? And I did think it was interesting here that she dropped some info that Swan's job was to prepare the tower to accept the coming of the Dragon Dragon Reborn, while Moraine's job, she says, was to shield Rand if he did begin to show signs that he was going mad, which I was like, okay, I did not think that was their agreement. I thought she was just supposed to support him and help him, but in this scene, Swan's saying that she wants the dragon to be proclaimed in Kyrian when prophecy says it must be in Falma, and so I'm just like, why are you trying to subvert the prophecies, Swan? Why are you treating Rand like a villain?
Look at these abs. Are these the abs of a villain?
I'm also not sure why Rand feels like his only option is to go to Lanfear for help when it just ends up being Varen who jailbreaks him, other than to have Lanfear literally be the distraction. Because on the one hand, I'm like, go off, sis, and love her outfit. She is serving. But the scene of her rampaging and torching the Foregate did seem a little bit anticlimactic and underwhelming overall. Yeah, I guess it was just to be the distraction so someone else could go jailbreak him. So I didn't really understand that, but yeah, I was like, go off, sis, slay. Wait, no. Not like that. I had a feeling that the Matt that was holding Matt in the last scene was actually Ishii in disguise, but him just sitting here stroking and petting Rand here is just like, ooh, so creepy. Like, why are you so creepy? Creepy McCreeperson, bro. With Rand meeting Lanfear again in Teleran Riyadh, though, we get a closer look at the pattern on the back of his coat, and I liked that it's just all of these living creatures centered around the sun, which to me is just a metaphor for Rand as the Dragon Reborn being like this beacon and this light, and also like this center of the pattern that everything else in the world revolves around. Much like Lanfear herself, I think it's cute how he thinks that he's even remotely capable of manipulating her, and yeah, also be careful what you wish for. Unleashing her on Kyrian like that, there's definitely going to be some collateral damage there that hopefully he's gonna feel bad about. Now, again, a brief spoiler interlude here, so I'll put a timestamp when it's safe to come back, but I've been wondering this whole time as a book reader which warder Alana is eventually going to lose. Dude over here, like literally talking about missing life on the farm has got me feeling like it's gonna be him. For a minute I was even worried that Lanfear was gonna kill him in this episode. Next scene, we jump to Lan and Logain, of all people. So we're getting a lot of interesting character interactions that were not in the books in this episode. But again, called it. Moraine only shielded, confirmed. So like a lot of us book readers have been saying and predicting, Moraine was indeed not severed or cut off from the One Power, but she just had a really powerful shield made out of Saidine, which she could not see, placed on her by the Forsaken, and we now know they are able to tie off or knot their weaves and thus maintain a shield on someone or hold it in place without the channeler having to constantly be present to maintain it themselves. I was cackling at listening to Logain literally read Moraine to filth. Then Alana busts in and says that there's a fire in the Foregate, so they don't know it's literally a Forsaken on a rampage. Cause how did they miss Lanfear in that outfit? So then with Avienda and Perrin, we get a little bit more of an explanation of G.A.Toe, and I just think it's funny that she's like, it's dishonorable to remind me of my own dishonor, and that she thinks his wedding ring means he's owned by a wetlander woman. Yeah, just another example of the reverse patriarchy here in the Wheel of Time. In Aiel culture, it is tradition that the women do the proposing. And also, yay, maiden hand talk. I love that we're actually getting that implemented in the show. Again with the knocking people out thing. Nice little bit of Aes Sedai wordplay with Varen in this scene, with lying to Liane without outright doing so, even though she might be able to if she wanted to, wink wink. But Alana now is supposedly Team the Dragon Reborn and definitely does know that it's Rand specifically now, if she did not before. But maybe this is further setting up Alana and Varen being more closely roped into the greater main character plot lines than they were in the books, and like I've said in some of my other videos, giving her and Varen more of a reason to be directly involved and keeping tabs on the characters in further plot lines than just, oh, we just happen to be here, what a coincidence. What I mentioned with the way that the Adam works by corrupting the link between channelers, it is cool that we get a brief little display again in the episode, just like we did in season 1 of linking between channelers and how they're able to use Sidar through a link or a circle. Juan, for some reason, seems really adamant that Rand can't leave Kyrian, and I'm like, why? Why stop Moraine? Especially by forcing her oath to you. But I was kind of giggling at just the VFX that they used here in this scene for Rand's little tiny sidey knife, like tickling the knot on Moraine's shield, like, I don't know why, I just thought it was funny. And I myself had been wondering this whole time where Lanfear went, but I did not expect her to show up here and then just team up with Moraine of all people. I really thought she was gonna make good on her threat/promise to Rand, and that maybe Moraine was gonna get ganked as early as this episode, but no. Love that we get another little Easter egg here when she says, every day you grow more like Luz, aka that's what I love about you. Please, please say this is still all an act and that Moraine and Swan are still both in on it together and they're still in love. I really don't want this to be the showrunners trying to drive a wedge in between them and their relationship. I'm still just left wondering, does Swan really believe what she's saying and believe that their plan failed and that they basically need to tame Rand? Or is it all a front because she has to maintain that position formally as in her role as the Amerlin seat? And in the preview, it was very interesting that they are alluding to not only Lanfear and Luz Theron being really close in the Age of Legends, but that Lanfear, Luz, and Ishi were inseparable? Were they a throuple? So my overall thoughts about this episode, like I said, epic highs and lows. The high for me was definitely as a book reader seeing the scene out of the books of Moraine and Swan being present for the foretelling about Rand and that payoff of the thing that happened 20 years ago that caused the abrupt personality shift in Moraine and why she is the way she is now. But in terms of lows, I do not see where the showrunners and writers are going with the conflict between Swan and Moraine in this episode. Is it a double cross where it's all an act and they're just pretending to fight? Or does Swan really think this way? Because we see in this episode that she seems to think that her position as Amerlin is secure enough to maintain control of Rand and not let others take him or gentle him. But like the book readers know, and even the show is setting up this season that that is not the case and that her position is a lot more precarious than she thinks. So like I've been saying this whole time, I definitely think that losing not only Rand but also now Elaine and just everything that happened this episode is going to be part of her downfall. It may also be in part because of Aes Sedai being captured by Shan-Chan and Egwene and Nynaeve running away from the tower. Because originally I had thought that maybe Varen was going to tell Swan about Liandrin and the existence of the Black Aja, but now Swan knows that Varen is the one who helped Rand and Moraine escape. I thought that maybe if Varen had told the Amerlin that would have prompted Swan to then keep like Egwene and the other girls hunting the Black Aja in the tower. But now now I'm wondering if the girls are gonna go back to the tower at all. In the books, they do go back to the tower for a brief stint. Swan puts them on the hunt secretly for the Black Aja, and they get on Elida's radar. I also do think that the pacing this episode definitely felt rushed. There were just a lot of loose ends to tie up before the finale, especially with the differences and deviations from the book plot, and now they had to bring all the characters back together where they needed to be for the book plot and the finale. And so, like I said, it was nice that we got to see every character, but I think that was definitely why things felt so rushed. One thing that I at first thought felt rushed, but upon further reflection I wanted to mention was about the Amerlin's fast travel that we've kind of saw between Camelin and Kyrian and Tarvalon. At first I thought that it did seem a little outlandish that she'd be able to hop back and forth between all of these places so quickly like we're seeing in the show. But, and I'll like insert a map somewhere here, Kyrian is kind of in between Camelin and Tarvalon. The road between Camelin and Tarvalon goes right past Kyrian, and you just have to take a short little detour to go to Kyrian instead. It's not entirely implausible that Lan was able to catch her on the way back to Tarvalon, leaving Camelin, and that she just decided to take the detour and go to Kyrian instead. I had also heard that Swan's actress might not have been available for shooting season 2 as much as they needed or might have liked her to be, and I feel like this definitely sadly ended up hurting the overall plot this season, because I think we needed a lot more of her presence throughout this season and needed her to be in the tower meeting all of these characters and just see more of her point of view perhaps, and just get a little bit more insight into her abrupt change of position and why she's suddenly turning on Moraine like this and changing her mind. I'm just over here like, sorry, there's no playbook for training the literal dragon reborn. Jeez. Now, in terms of predictions, after watching this episode, I'm starting to think that maybe the girls may not return to the White Tower at all, because let's face it, there's no way Egwene is going to subject herself to going back to being a novice and doing dishes after all that she's been through. And with the time skip that we had at the beginning of the season, they've now had at least 6 months of tower training, which is enough to know the basics of channeling. I think that as horrible as her experience as a Damani is, it may have opened Egwene's eyes to just how, for better or worse, quick and effective the Shan are at teaching people how to channel. And not only that, but in contrast, how rigid and outdated a lot of tower traditions are, but then also, at the same time, how important other traditions are, like the 3 oaths, because I think especially for Egwene later on, and just with the impact that Shan and how they treat channelers has, the 3 oaths do serve a function of setting Aes Sedai apart from other people who can channel. They're there to keep the Aes Sedai to a higher standard and hold them to that higher standard, unlike the Shan who we see using the power as a weapon and using it to kill and other things. They take these 3 oaths to never lie, never use the one power as a weapon except for in defense of their own life and against the dark and against like shadow spawn, and to never make a weapon with the power that people could use to kill each other. And in doing so, and by holding themselves to that standard, they're willingly dampening their own power and lifespan. But unlike I predicted from all the name drops that we got here with Tyr, and so I thought maybe that they were hinting that we were gonna go to Tyr next season, they're saying season 3 is primarily going to be adapting The Shadow Rising, which is mostly following the plotline of going to the Aiel land and Ruidian. So maybe we are going to skip Tyr and Calendar for now, and Rand will just go straight to the waste, and we'll get the whole Kara Karn plot. With the faster pace that we're getting and the limited amount of seasons that we're getting for the show, need to start introducing the Aiel now to set up the Shido as another big antagonist, because, you know, the Dark One and the Forsaken and the Shan Chan and all the Dark Friends aren't enough. I do still think, though, that we are going to get a cold open at some point in Camelin, where we will meet possibly Morghese, but definitely Elida, since we know she's been cast, who I'm guessing will be furious that Swan has not only, like, lost the daughter heir, and from their perspective didn't tell them when she was just in Camelin visiting, but that this will also then provoke Elida to return to Tarvalon and the Tower, and then force her and the other Reds to depose Swan. So I definitely think they're setting that up to be a major plot point for next season. I was thinking about Elida as a character and how she's basically like Aaron Burr in Hamilton. Moraine and Swan got to be the ones 20 years ago who were in the room where it happened, and she's just really jealous. In regard to the whole Matt and the stabbening, as I'm calling it, is he being inceptioned? I've been rewatching season 1, and in season 1 episode 5, when they're watching Logain be paraded through the streets of Tarvalon, Matt turns to Rand and says something like, hey, if it turns out that it's one of us who is the dragon and we start going mad like Logain, we're gonna make a pact that the other one will take us out, put us out of our misery. So I'm wondering if this is gonna come back into play and be a factor into why he feels like maybe he needs to stab Rand, because he thinks he's doing Rand a favor and fulfilling their bargain. And it also has got me thinking, especially with how they're featuring Moraine as a character more in the show, that Moraine and Rand's destinies from the moment she heard that foretelling are now forever intertwined. And how really, as we're being shown in these episodes, they both just need to stop fronting and trying to be strong and do everything themselves and learn to accept help from others. Swan basically compelling Moraine with the oath rod, just the whole scene and even the way that Rosamund Pike acted it felt so icky to me. I really just hate the character assassination that is happening to Swan Shanche in this episode, because in my mind that is what it is. Swearing an oath to a specific person is just not a thing done in the books. And because of that, it becomes a major point of contention against Elida's tyrannical rule as Amerlin later, when she decides to add extra oaths, including a personal oath of fealty to her. Storytelling-wise, I just don't see where they were going with this plot. I'm hoping that it's all an act and they're just pretending to fight. I still can't figure out if this is all just to give Swan plausible deniability, or if this is really the show writers trying to drive a wedge between her and Moraine and break up their relationship. It could be because later on in the book, both women do go on to have hetero relationship pairings, but personally I don't like or understand those relationship pairings, so I will not be disappointed if we didn't get those in the show. And so I really hope that this is not their way of breaking them up so they can go fall for some dudes later. I'm hoping that maybe what will happen next season or even next episode is that we'll see some of Swan and maybe the Tower as a whole dealing with the implications of Swan making Moraine swear to her on the oath rod and then having to use that oath is tantamount to compulsion. Hopefully she realizes realizes that, and then comes to realize just how wrong and how dangerous that was. And so that will set it up to show us why it's wrong when Elida does it later. But sadly, this may just mark the end of their relationship. I think we're also here kind of getting some setup, especially in the convo we had between the Soldam and Egwene, of why the Shan-Chan are here and why they are the way they are, implications for the Aes Sedai and just the Westlands as a whole, of the Shan-Chan's whole manifest destiny bullshit. They want to spread their way of life all across the globe. It's like, what if the descendants of Alexander the Great had showed up in Europe and the Middle East 1,000 years later, just claiming ownership over everything that he had conquered in his lifetime? Looking back at this season now as a whole, storytelling-wise, like I've said, I could definitely see why it was more interesting to start the season with the characters all in separate places in order to contrast it with season 1 where everyone was together. But I feel like it just took too long for them to bring all of the characters and all of the storylines back together. Some of the storylines, especially with like Moraine and Lan, just drug on for too long and took away from us seeing other things. Like, yeah, I wish we had gotten maybe a little bit more of what Rand had been doing, getting some lessons from that Aiel War veteran. There were some things that I ended up not liking or understanding about this episode, but then there were also just some things and some moments that I did like. I think I will close this off by saying that I definitely see now what Rafe Judkins meant when he did that Twitter X Q&A, and he said that episode 7 was probably going to be the most controversial in the eyes of book readers from a changes and storytelling perspective. He was definitely right about that one. There were a lot of changes. Rand, Moraine, and Lanfear was the last team up that I ever saw coming. I will be very sad that the show will be over for another season already and we'll have to wait for more, but so far definitely been more consistently better than season 1, and I'm looking forward to the finale. So let me know what your thoughts are below, especially with all of the changes and surprises that we got this episode. Do you think Matt is really in foam, or is he being mind-fucked still? Look forward to seeing your own thoughts and feelings in the comments below, and until next time, stay classy.